This is Path of Exile 2 Mercenary Act1 to Act3 footage from the November press event. During this introduction, I'll be reviewing my playthrough, discussing build progression, passive-free routing, WASD versus click to move, and other interesting gameplay details before concluding with a question and answer section. It's important to note that while I'll be discussing my experience, this is not a guide, and any progression details shared are solely to provide context into various insights. Furthermore, it's worth repeating, the early access version may differ significantly from the press version I played. So with that out of the way, loading into the riverbanks. The first skill provided was Fragmentation Rounds, a single-use, shotgun-like skill that pierces the first two targets it hits, generally doing more damage in close range, and not so much from afar. However, what caught my eye was Explosive Grenade, an area of effect fire explosion skill, with a 3-second cooldown, 3 uses, and a 2.5-second fuse duration, giving it the potential for a clear moving playstyle. Yet similar to other runs, with just the starting weapon, no extra source of flat damage on gear, attack-based builds can generally feel weak, which meant the next step was to farm some gold, to either gamble, or in this case, purchase and craft a new weapon. This weapon in particular increased my damage by around 70%, finding a noticeable improvement in trash clear. Still, if your character level is equal to the zone level, bosses in Path of Exile 2 can be quite tanky. For example, as a level 5 character in a level 5 zone, the Rust King took around 1 minute 33 seconds to kill. Whereas again as a level 5 character in a level 3 zone, the Devourer took only 40 seconds to be defeated. Which leads me to the following takeaway, which I found to stay true for the whole playthrough. You can attempt to speedrun through progression, killing only a few mobs in each zone, slowly defeating bosses with well-planned combos and timely dodge rolls, or you can full clear zones, going out of the way to kill extra monsters, which on average should result in a higher level character, better gear, extra boss kills, and overall similar progression time. If you're looking for a recommendation for launch, I would recommend the latter, especially since many side bosses and side quests provide impactful character buffs. Moving forward to the graveyard, we had 3 new build additions: Flash Grenade, Multiple Projectiles, Double Barrel Support. Flash Grenade is another cooldown based grenade and serves 2 purposes, the first being to stun swarming enemies, allowing you to play aggressively, and secondly, to create DPS windows by staggering bosses. Multiple Projectile Support was of course linked to Explosive Grenade, and for the most part, enabled the clear while moving playstyle I desired. And lastly, Double Barrel Support was linked to Fragmentation Shot, increasing the ammo count from 1 to 2, with the downside of 30% less reload speed, which was worth it, clear off stragglers more efficiently, and to conserve Explosive Grenade charges. In terms of feeling, I would say once I had this setup, Mercenary started to feel good, most likely because I had tools to deal with swarming enemies, and also had enough AoE coverage to clear somewhat quickly. In terms of Act 1 difficulty, it was mostly smooth sailing, with only 3 deaths. The first occurring to Draven, where I failed to roll out of his AoE projectile slashes, and the next 2 taking place in the Iron Manor, both being situations where I got surrounded and tried to spam dodge roll to no avail. Other than boss fights or hard-hitting ranged monsters, getting swarmed is generally how you might die. So for those that are thinking about playing hardcore, I believe you could actually pull it off, given that you gear well, level above the zone level, and are tracking your mob controlling cooldowns. Now traveling forward, the next major skill acquisition was Rapid Shot, a rapid firing skill that heats up your crossbow as you attack, buffing grenades, providing 6% of damage as extra fire damage per heat stack. So as you can imagine, the combo is to stagger bosses and stack heat with rapid fire before throwing explosive grenades. The strategy was generally effective at chunking bosses, if I could find a window to build stacks, an opportunity that wasn't always available, either due to boss AI or lack of character defense. Now other than stacking life and equipping armor gear for physical damage mitigation, the biggest defensive lever was dynamically changing resist gear depending on the zone. This point is worth noting because in Acts 1 and 2, item resist affixes are generally quite low, which in combination with a minus 10% resist penalty per act can make capping resist difficult. The solution at the time was to hot swap charms and resist rings, and on launch to also consider resist ruins. Skipping ahead to Act 3, we have 2 final skill additions, Explosive Shot and Oil Grenade. Explosive Shot is a detonator skill, which triggers any active grenades in its explosion radius. However, it requires multiple projectile support to be effective, meaning we'd have to remove it from Explosive Grenade, since in Path of Exile 2, you can only use a single copy of any support gem. So to maintain Explosive Grenade coverage, I passed through cluster bombs on the passage tree, and exchanged my level 26 crossbow for this magic crossbow, with the grenade skills fire an additional projectile implicit. Despite lowering my tooltip DPS, the extra projectile was worth it. Oil Grenade, on the other hand, was a bonus addition to the build, offering 3 benefits: slowing enemies down, lowering fire resistance by 20%, and creating Burning Ground if ignited by a fire explosion. The Burning Ground wasn't too impressive, but the slow and fire exposure were much appreciated. In this playtest, this is where my build concluded, and to summarize my Mercenary experience, it was fun, and it just kept getting better and better, especially so with the addition of each new interesting skill gem. While I didn't unlock cluster grenades in this playthrough, its screen clearing potential definitely tempts the Mercenary playthrough on launch. Anyways, transitioning to the passive tree, it ended up like this, and before I discuss the details, I must re-emphasize that this is an early access version of the game, so nothing is final, and there's no way to know whether this tree or build is optimal given the blind nature of the run. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's discuss what I did. Starting out, I passed through the projectile damage nodes on the right, ending with this notable. Then at first, I allocated Ricochet for more efficient % increased projectile damage, but decided to respec out of it via the hooded one, and opted for increased area of effect and cooldown recovery rate on the left path instead. Afterwards, I attempted to rush the grenade cluster, which in hindsight was a mistake, evidenced by the difficulty I had with the Wrathbreaker fight. To defeat Wrathbreaker, I had to A, get good, but B, become hard to kill, which I did by allocating hard to kill. Moving onward, I unallocated hard to kill and continued my rush to the grenade cluster, which seemed effective at increasing both my clear and single target damage. This metagame of allocating extra recovery for difficult boss fights and extra clear speed for progression worked out well, but I imagine in late game, when respec and gold costs are much higher, frequent passive tree changes won't be possible. Around the end of Act 2, my damage felt lower than I would have liked, so in addition to crafting a new crossbow, I allocated Overwhelm for a ton of % increased damage with two-handed weapons. The additional 20% increased stun buildup in combination with 30% stun buildup from Remorseless and 80% more stun buildup from Overpower support generally made staggering bosses with Flash Grenade easy. Finally, to round out the build, I passed through Instant Reload, acquiring 70% increased reload speed, which overall made the build feel much smoother. Now the interesting question is, where do you go next? There are only a handful of grenade passes available, but lots of projectile passes, affecting ailments, % chance not to consume ammo, pierce, chain, reload speed, and more, which intuitively makes me wonder if the next step is to always carry two crossbows and make more use of weapon set passive points. Speculating to late game, weapon swapping might be the most optimal strategy, especially when factoring resists, monster types, and monster AI. Now a couple more conclusions before we head to the Q&A. Path of Exile is in part a game about creativity and experimentation, which I believe they've enabled by dropping tons of uncut skill gems and lots of common currency items. In short, it felt good to just try things, and I hope future design decisions lean more into this freedom, and wherever possible, avoid unnecessary friction. Which leads me once more to mana. During my playthrough at the end of some boss fights, I would run out of mana and mana fast charges, leaving me to auto-attack until I could cast my next ability. In conversation with Octavian, he said my mana problems were somewhat expected, since I was spamming high-cost grenade skills. He also recommended acquiring flasks with a gain charges per second mod. I ended up crafting a life flask, but was unable to craft a mana flask in the time I had, leading to a tedious experience at the tail end of some boss fights. Now there are some considerations. Perhaps level 35 character is not high enough for level 36 zone, or perhaps I didn't itemize enough during progression, or perhaps my build was just weak. But extending that last thought further, if you have a good build with good damage, you don't need the recharge modifier. But if your build is weak and your damage is low, going feels excessively punishing. So hear me out. What if the recharge modifier was implicit to all flasks? I believe that would alleviate some of the tedium experienced by low damage builds on extended boss fights. That said, the point in itemization is key. Path of Exile is a game about items, and undergearing is a skill issue. Furthermore, there might be other forms of recovery available later on, such as Leech, which may solve the issue entirely. Alright, now for some rapid fire questions and answers. Was it fun? Yes. The farther I progressed, the more fun it became, especially as I understood my character better. Is a slow start worth it for a late game power spike? I think for many players it will be. Those cluster bombs looked crazy. As for leveling tips, if you're looking to progress quickly, you can try to kill while moving as much as possible. But if you're looking for a smoother playthrough, then my general advice is to full clear zones and spend a reasonable amount of time upgrading and thinking about your gear, and also reading the in-game wiki and skill tooltips. This approach will take longer progress to endgame, but should result in a stronger character and a greater understanding of how the game works. Does it zoom? I want to say yes, at least for the campaign. High damage explosions with lingering grenades definitely enable a clear while moving playstyle. That said, we don't really have a baseline for what zooming entails in the endgame. I noticed you would roll instead of walk when going through zones. Is it faster to roll than walk? Rolling and walking are the same speed. It's just a bad habit from another Exile-like game. Is it squishy? The Mercenary felt fairly tanky in comparison to previous playtests, most likely from access to armor gear and life regen on the tree. But again, you don't have a large baseline to judge from. How does reloading feel? To be frank, early on, reloading didn't feel so great, which is in part why I chose to play a grenade build. Having said that, it did feel manageable once I allocated increased reloading speed on the passive tree. WASD versus click to move. I would say both input styles are playable, and ultimately it depends on the player and their preference. Personally, I prefer maintaining a consistent input style across all my builds, hence I see myself using WASD in all classes. Nonetheless, here's what I noticed while experimenting. For click to move, the primary benefit was that my keyboard hand was quite relaxed, whereas my mouse hand was very active. Precision micro movements while maximizing DPS uptime also felt harder to pull off, though this might just be a skill issue. For WASD, the increased APM moved to my keyboard hand. It also felt easier to micro, and overall just felt more natural. That said, my T and F keys in particular felt somewhat unusable, and our prime canvas were being rebound to a mouse button. It also raised a small concern that there won't be enough usable keybinds as we acquire more skills. Inventory management aside, I could see a world where for some builds, using a controller or a joystick is the superior gameplay option. If you're thinking about playing a Mercenary, then up next I have a couple of highlights showcasing the playstyle. Furthermore, I would also recommend checking out other gameplay reveals to see what excites you. That said, you can't just jump in blind. The developers have put a ton of effort into balance and improved accessibility. Anyways, more videos soon. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day, Exiles. Bye.
Mana! sec.
All these statues still just as dead. What was the point, eh?
Need a sec. Not yet. Here it comes!
Well, that's one down.
Need a sec. More time.
Embrace corruption.
Not yet. Need a sec. Out of mana!